get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Hey, Thrive Loud listeners, Lou Diamond here. We have a special episode for you today here on Thrive Loud. If you recently heard the interview I conducted with Jane Ubel-Meyer, we spoke about her amazing program called Bedside Reading. And we may have hinted to it in the interview, but we created an offshoot of the Thrive Loud podcast called Authors That Thrive. Technically, it's Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive. A fun podcast for those authors that are specifically thriving in their lives, their businesses, and their passions. And it's a special program geared toward the bedside reading offering, which Jane explained about in her interview. Once a month, we will showcase one of those amazing authors here on Thrive Loud. And that's what we're doing today with the incredible author, Hank Phillippi Ryan. You're going to love her story, her career as an investigative reporter, and an amazing author. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with Hank Phillippi Ryan on Bedside Readings Authors That Thrive here on Thrive Loud.
Welcome to Bedside Readings Authors That Thrive, a podcast show that provides you exclusive access to top writers around the globe and how they are thriving through their writing, their passions, and their lives. Here's your host, Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to Bedside Readings Authors That Thrive, connecting you to amazing authors that are thriving through their work and in their lives each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today, we have an on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV. She's won 36 Emmys and dozens more journalism honors. The national best-selling author of 11 mysteries. She's also an award winner in her second profession with 5 Agathas, 3 Anthonys, 2 McCavities, the Daphne, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award for The Other Woman. Critics call her a master of suspense and a super and gifted storyteller. And she is the only author to have won the Agatha in 4 different categories: Best First, Best Novel, Best Short Story, and Best Nonfiction. Her newest book is The Murder List, which has been dubbed an exhilarating thrill ride, and some say her best yet. Please welcome Hank Phillippi Ryan. Hank, how are you today?
Great. How are you? Waiting for the snow?
We're recording this in winter in the Northeast. And listeners should know that it's always so much fun up here, right? But, hopefully it won't be too problematic for either one of us, right? Hank, I'd love starting off these shows hearing a little bit about your most recent work and kind of talking about how this became the topic of what you've been working on next, because I think everyone's eager to hear, with all the books that you've done in the past, how this one became your hot topic and the direction you're in now.
Oh, big question, and big, wonderful question. Harlan Coben once told me to write the kind of book you love to read. And when you do that, the passion of the writing will come through for the reader, and the reader will feel that joy, that surprise, that enthusiasm as they're reading the book. So I don't like graphic sex in books. I don't like graphic violence in books. I don't like inappropriate language in books. So I just don't put that in. What I do like is twisty, turny, deceptive mind games, gaslighting, where the tension and the conflict and the violence comes from emotion and from what someone tries to convince someone else is reality. And my books have a little bit of a legal element in them too. One wonderful reviewer said, if John Grisham and Lisa Scottolini had a book baby, The Murder List would be it. So my books are wonderful airplane books. They're vacation books. They're sort of compelling, riveting, can't put them down. I want you to miss your stop on the bus, right? Because you're reading these books. So, again, it's a fast-paced psychological thriller, The Murder List. You were asking where The Murder List came from, and that is such an interesting story. I've been a television reporter for 43 years, if you can believe it.
Mm.
I've wired myself with hidden cameras. I've confronted corrupt politicians. I've gone undercover and in disguise. But the idea for the murder list actually came at the kitchen table. My husband is a criminal defense attorney, as I said, and he was telling me about a particularly grisly, I have to say, gruesome murder case that he was handling, where he was defending a person accused of murder. And with one sort of track of my brain, I was thinking about the evidence and this story and how my husband could present this persuasively to a jury. But with the other track of my brain, I was thinking, what a good guy my husband is. You know, he's standing up for the rights of the individual. He's protecting this little guy. He's making sure that jurors know people are innocent until proven guilty. You know, he's protecting him from, the strong, powerful arm of the prosecution. What a good guy he is to devote his life to that. And then I started thinking about the prosecutor, say that's a man as well, and his wife across town. And was the prosecutor's wife thinking, when he was talking about the same case, was the prosecutor's wife thinking, what a good guy my husband is, It's interesting, isn't it? He's standing up for the rights of the public. He's keeping criminals off the streets. He's standing up for law and order. He's working for the system of justice. What a good guy he is. And it really kind of stopped me in my tracks, because I thought everybody thinks they're the good guy.
Yeah.
And that's how the justice system works. But when it comes to murder, there's only one truth. How do we get to that? When both prosecutor and defense attorney think they're good, how does a jury decide what's true? And that's what I wanted to do in the murder list. I wanted to set up a twisty-turny, riveting, conflict-riven situation where the reader was sort of the jury and had to figure out what was true.
Oh, I love this.
And I wanted, my readers are smart. They're smart. And they try to solve this mystery, this thriller along, as they turn the pages. And I wanted to kind of pull the rug out from under them just when they think they know the answer to the mystery. I say, wait a minute. What if it happened this way? So it's really kind of fascinating, because I get a lot of email from people who say, oh my golly, that ending. They say, when I finished the book, I went right back to the beginning and started over to read it again to see all the clues I missed. And that is a joy for me to have, because my books are fair. The endings are fair. They're not out of left field. All the clues are there. You just have to look for them.
Hank, I've got a question here, and it has to do with the two sides of your amazing career, where life imitates art or art imitates life, whichever way you want to pair the two together. I'm very interested in understanding your preparedness style. Is the way that you prepare your investigative reporting similar or different to the way that you prepare to put together a novel?
And the answer to that very wonderful question is this: yes and no, and both ways work. And that's one of the reasons I think both of my careers are so compelling and still fascinating to me. Lee Child and I have talked about this. When we begin a story, when I begin a newspaper story or a television story, or whether it's crime fiction, I have this gem of an idea, this tiny little seed of an idea, and I want it to grow. But as an investigative reporter, I'm out looking for the story. I don't know what the end of the story is when I start it, because if I did, it wouldn't be news, right? It wouldn't be new. It would be a known story. So I'm looking for a new story. And when I'm writing crime fiction, I'm searching for the story as well. So I begin in crime fiction and in investigative reporting, I begin with one good idea, and I see where it goes, and I seek out the story. Part of it is seeking out the story, and part of it is sort of, and I don't mean to sound woo-woo about this, but part of it is the story revealing itself to me. I see who's involved, I see what the conflicts are, I see who wants what, and how important that is, and how far a person will go to get it, and who will be trampled along the way, and how high the stakes are. And that all gets woven together in a kind of a Rubik's Cube kind of way. You know, when you're searching for the solution of a complicated problem, and sort of click, 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 it all sort of changes, the pictures on the side of the puzzle changes, and at some moment, at the end of the story or at the end of the book, there it is. There's the answer that you were searching for. And there was no way to get there except for searching and tweaking and polishing and twisting and thinking and imagining and coming up with the most surprising and yet most satisfying ending that you could. So as an investigative reporter and as a crime fiction author, I am always searching for the best possible story. And you know, as a journalist, the highest accolade you could get was, wow, that was a great story. And that's what I'm looking for in television, and that's what I'm looking for in my thrillers. It
does make sense, because even though the tone or the angle that you begin solving the problem, whether it's getting to the path of the mystery or whether it's informing the viewer about the story, you need to kind of go down a certain path. And this is the question I have. In your career, do you need to work in isolation so that when you're in storytelling, mystery writing mode, that's got to be the main focus? Versus if your world of journalism overlaps? I'm curious to know what goes on between the ears of Hank in the sense of how you're able to juggle, because there is a different tactic towards getting to your end goal in both those ways.
Well, first of all, and that is a wonderful question and a fascinating answer. But before I answer that, let me go back to a little bit more of what you were asking before. Because when you talk about getting to the end, I don't know what the end is in my television stories, and I don't know what the end is in my novels. And that's another fascinating thing. When I don't know in my novels what happens until I write the next word or the next sentence or the next paragraph or the next chapter. I have no idea. And that's what gets me to the computer every day, is I can't wait to see what happens. I just can't wait to find out. I can't wait for the story to reveal itself. And so when people say, wow, the ending of your book, The Murder List, or the ending of your book, Trust Me, that really surprised me. I'm like, yeah, wasn't that a surprise? You know, talk about a surprise ending. I surprise myself. And I surprise myself every day as an author. Sue Grafton used to call that the magic of writing, that somehow the reporter brain comes up with a new world and a new story that never existed before. And that's really one of the joys to me of writing. This absolute surprise, gasping surprise every day, and coming up with something brand new. So you were asking about the isolation and whether I have to write by myself. Oh, that is so funny how that has evolved. You know, as a reporter, I've written in fires and hurricanes and blizzards and shootouts and SWAT teams and tear gas and, you know, being soaking wet and, you know, having my pen not write on the soaking wet notebook, and chaos and people yelling. I can write a news story in that kind of circumstance. But I have to tell you, when I'm writing my novels, it's much better when it's quiet. You know, I sit here in my study in Boston with the big sugar maple tree out the window, and it's peaceful, and no one's bothering me. I do really good work on an airplane. It's just this quiet bubble of time where I can be completely involved in the world of my story. And there's also the, you know, on an airplane, there's a deadline, right? There's a built-in deadline because at some certain time you're going to land. And that kind of deadline, and I think that's another thing, as you say, that comes out of being a reporter. that kind of deadline makes me work really hard. It doesn't terrify me. It's really fuel to write better and write faster.
Hank, I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I have dealt with dozens and dozens of authors. And what I have to say is you can hear the passion, even in the way you're telling the story about yourself in a storytelling type way. And it's just as engaging as your novels are. It's pretty interesting that that's a rare skill or a rare personality trait, because many times people will have all their outlet come through their work, but it actually is coming out of you as even you talk about yourself, which I'm sure our listeners are picking up as much as I am, which means that you're loving the passionate stuff that you do in each and every day because you're thriving in that world. My question for you is, we sometimes have, we'll put on quotes here, off days that we're not kicking on all cylinders. Hank, when you have trouble thriving, who or what practice do you seek to get back on the thriving track?
Having a bad day, that happens quite a bit. I have learned, interestingly, and tell me what you think about this. There's a wonderful quote from Thomas Edison who said, "When you think you have exhausted all of the possibilities, remember this, you haven't." So when I think, I can't come up with the answer, whether it's an investigative story or something in my crime fiction writing, I think, okay, well, I can figure this out. I have confidence that I can figure this out. Maybe not right this minute, but eventually. And one of the wonderful things about writing for television, it's very fast-paced and very instantaneous, and you do it right then and you're done. If I said to my news director, could I be on the 6 o'clock news at 10 after 6? Because I'm not really feeling it about this story. I wouldn't have a job. So I understand a deadline. I understand getting my work done in time. I also understand in writing crime fiction that it takes a year to write a book. And so what I do on day 32 can change on day 33 and can change on day 75. And so it's not set in stone. So on the days that I'm having a bad writing day, I think, sometimes I'm sitting at my computer thinking, this is the worst thing that anybody has ever written. But I know that will never see the light of day. I know I'm just getting the story out there. And later, I'll be able to craft it and tweak it and fix it, or maybe cut it altogether. But it's just all part of a process. And I've learned after all these years as a reporter that in every good project, whether it's in television, whether it's writing, whether it's in any kind of a project in anyone's life, there's always a moment of panic where you think, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. Whose idea was this? I can't possibly do this. That moment of panic. And I have learned that moment of panic is just part of the process. That is part of the journey. And what has always happened, knock on wood, after that moment of panic is that the answer emerges. That panic is your brain saying, I'm about to come up with the answer. So on the days that I'm panicking, I just think, hooray, I'm going to embrace the panic because the next thing that happens is going to be success. Oh,
I love how you're able to see through the fear that's holding you back to jump into courage where you have the opportunity to shine. I love it. I love asking authors this question. Is there one author, speaker, or creator that you admire most?
No. I can't remember one because, of all the storytellers in the world, Stephen King is just an amazing storyteller. But then Edith Wharton, such a groundbreaking author who, took risks and was incredibly avant-garde. Shakespeare, the best storyteller of all times. So it's really difficult to come up with one person, one speaker, one icon for me. But I do think that, we all try to do the best that we can at every minute of every day. And I love sort of taking in what other people say and seeing how it affects me and how it changes my life. I also love doing public speaking. I love going and talking to groups and seeing how they feel and seeing how they react. and hearing how they feel about my writing and my life and seeing how I can help them. This is a very supportive world, a very supportive community, that community of writers and authors and readers. And I'm just so pleased to be part of it.
Hank, I want to thank you for all your creations that you have. I'm going to avoid the question, which I've sometimes asked for those that have written many books. It's kind of like your favorite children. Do you have one that you like the most? I won't do that to you because that just wouldn't be fair. But I look forward to seeing more of them come out, and look forward to reading this one, as I've read many of the other ones before. And you're right. You're on the edge of a seat and you have no idea where it's going to happen. So thank you for living in the moment when you're creating this content.
Well, I hope you love The Murder List, and I hope your listeners do too. I'm incredibly proud of it and incredibly thrilled with the wonderful reaction to this book.
And keep on thriving, onward and upward. And thank you for joining us on Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive.
Thank you for listening to Authors That Thrive, brought to you by Bedside Reading. To learn more about today's guest, head on over to bedsidereading.com. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or follow us everywhere on social media at Bedside Reading.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and check us out on the web at thriveloud.com, or follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud.